This is LXPN TV, and I'm Colin O'Keefe. The SEC recently brought its very first case alleging a company violated the anti-retaliation provisions of the Dodd-Frank Act. Joining me now to explain the specifics of what happened and its potential significance going forward is attorney Steve Pearlman. He's with Proskauer and author on the firm's blog, Proskauer Whistleblower Defense. Steve, first off, can you walk us through this one? What are the specifics of what happened here?
Sure, Colin, thanks. This is an awfully interesting case, not just because of the background facts, but because this is the first instance where we've seen the SEC make good on its promise that it was going to bring anti-retaliation actions under its self-designated enforcement power under Dodd-Frank. In this case, you had a head trader at a company called Paradigm, who it appears, based on a reading of the SEC's order, may have had some involvement in executing trades, but he complained of certain trades that he believed were not effective in terms of disclosure and consent requirements. And then the SEC got involved after he brought this to the SEC's attention. The SEC acted on some implementing regulations that it had crafted pursuant to the Dodd-Frank anti-retaliation provisions, and pursued an action on behalf of this head trader, who was the whistleblower, the tipster in this instance. The level of recovery that the SEC received was particularly high. It was over $2 million. Now, it's difficult upon reading the SEC's order to determine exactly how much of that money is attributable to the retaliation claim, but it may very well be quite significant given that there were over $2 million that were gotten. Now, we know some of that is from disgorgement, and we know that some of that is from interest, but we're talking about a lot of money here, particularly relative to what you see retaliation case settle for. So I think that it's a very interesting case because not only did the SEC apparently, and it's a little bit difficult, you have to parse through some of the language here, but the SEC didn't seem terribly daunted by the fact that the head trader, who was the tipster, may have had some awareness of some of the improprieties. We don't know that for sure, but it's something to be looked into in the future. And again, the amount of money that was recovered here is awfully substantial.
Definitely. We've seen with a number of these types of cases you and I have talked about before, that the monetary figures involved really seem to keep on climbing. But second, what are your thoughts on the significance of this individual case? What does this potentially mean going forward?
Well, Colin, this may very well be the tip of the iceberg. Dodd-Frank is still relatively young. We've seen many cases that have been brought by the private plaintiff's bar. I've seen in my practice many cases that have been threatened, and I expect to see proliferation of cases brought by the SEC to enforce the anti-retaliation provisions. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to have the SEC acting in a hyper-vigilant manner, bringing cases at the same type of pace that you see the EEOC bringing these claims? Are we going to see challenges to the SEC's authority to bring these claims? You could very well see in litigation defense counsel making the argument that Dodd-Frank is unambiguous and doesn't afford SEC the power to bring these enforcement actions. So you could see challenges that are brought to the regulations that the SEC crafted to give it this power. And how will we see this shake out in federal court? We have yet to see a Dodd-Frank retaliation claim that's been pursued on the merits by the SEC in federal court. Is this going to have an interim effect where we're going to have more deterrence, less retaliation? Are employers going to take heed and step up their compliance program? It remains to be seen, but this paradigm the resultant paradigm has gotten very significant media attention, and I think that helped with the SEC's objective of raising awareness that it means business and that it's going to pursue claims with greater vigor.
Definitely, definitely. This is going to be a fascinating one to watch. It is always interesting when regulatory agencies do something for the very first time, but of course, when that happens, there's bound to be some challenges to that, so we'll have to keep an eye out for those. Once again, that was attorney Steve Pearlman. For more of his insight on this case, be sure to visit Proskauer Whistleblower Defense. You can find that blog at whistleblower-defense.com. Thanks for joining me today, Steve.
Thank you, Colin.